Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining the webinar today. We're spotlighting the program IT Programming. Glad that you can join us. I want to start things off this morning with a land acknowledgement, as NSCC is in Mi'kmaq, the unceded territory and ancestral homeland of the Mi'kmaq Nation. Our relationship is based on a series of peace and friendship treaties between the Mi'kmaq Nation and the Crown, dating back to 1725. In Nova Scotia, we recognize that we're all treaty people. So with the webinar today, we are going to be giving you lots of info about IT programming, talking about what you can expect in the program. I have faculty who are going to be joining in a little bit, and we want to be able to answer any questions that you have. So if you are watching this live right now, you'll see on your GoToWebinar software on your end that there's a little question box like we have here on the screen. And so if there's anything you're curious about, type those questions in. We'll make sure that we can save some time at the end to get all of those answered. And maybe you're watching this as a recording later on. We can still help answer questions that you have. The recruitment team's email is highlighted in yellow at the screen, and we'll show it again to you at the end. It's recruitment@nscc.ca, and you're welcome to send us questions anytime. We can always connect you with faculty as well. All right, great. Let's get started. So if you've been poking around the NSCC website, you will see that we are all over the place. We have 14 campuses, including the online eCampus, and we're spread out all across the province. Some of our programs are offered at nearly every location. Some are offered at a select few. So when we're looking at IT programming, there are a number of locations where the program's offered. So you can see it's offered at the Marconi campus in Sydney. It's also offered at the online eCampus, the IT campus in Halifax, the COG Center of Geographic Sciences, which is connected to the Annapolis Valley campus, and then the two campuses where my faculty guests are teaching out of, the Burridge campus in Yarmouth, and then the Lunenburg campus, which is in Bridgewater, Nova Scotia. The curriculum is the same all across the province, but some of the kind of delivery that we're talking about is going to be specific to Burridge and Lunenburg today, but we'll dive into that in a minute. So I want to invite now my guest speakers. These are two faculty members from IT Programming, Nick Muse and Matthew Dares. They both teach between the Burridge and Lunenburg campuses and have a lot of details to share about the program. Welcome, guys.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hi. I'll leave things to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Megan. As Megan had said, my name is Nick Muse. I'm a faculty here based out of Burridge campus, and I teach in the IT programming stream that we offer. You want to say a little hello?
So my name's Matthew Dares, and I also teach in the IT programming program here at Burridge and to Lunenburg as well.
All right. So I'm going to start off with a bit of a program overview about what this IT programming stream is actually all about. So essentially what we are trying to do with the program is we're training you all to be software development professionals. That's the goal. We want you to be able to leave this program and make a choice about what type of actual development work you want to move into as a career. So it's a 2-year program, and it goes through each year. There are 3 different semesters. So we start with a fall semester and go into the winter semester, and then we finish things up each year with a shorter spring semester. So the program structure of the program itself, essentially we start with fundamentals of different areas in IT. So we do a lot of core courses in that first semester. So we're getting into things like networking, operating systems, basic web development, introduction to programming and logic, and working with databases as well. So after we build that initial foundation in that first semester, we start to move into more advanced programming related topics. So we start looking at things like object-oriented programming, specifically in Java, for example. And we look at also different areas like functional programming. And then we start to move into what's known as more lower level programming. So we're actually programming, having a little bit more kind of access and control to the actual underlying hardware of the system. And we start looking at things like data structures as well, because that's really important when it comes to managing large amounts of information in in a programmatic way. And then once we kind of moved into those more advanced topics, we really start looking at how we can build more advanced systems. So this is when we're starting to bring things all together and starting to build full-fledged applications that can do things like connect to a server to retrieve information over the internet, applications that have a graphical user interface, for example, or applications that can run on your mobile device, like an Android device, all those types of things. So you're really going to get a broad exposure to a lot of different things, but we're really trying to narrow you in to be competent professional software developers when you actually enter industry after your 2 years in our program here. So what do you actually need to get into this program? Well, our requirements are a high school diploma. If you're coming as an international student, then there may be an English language proficiency for you as an international student, but you can find more information about that on our website. And in terms of actual computing experience, like, do you need actual computing or previous programming experience or anything to come into this program? And the answer is absolutely not. We start from the basics and then we build everyone up from there. I would say, however, I strongly recommend if you're coming to the program, you should have an interest in computing, absolutely, interesting in technology and being curious about how those things work. And I would recommend a love for puzzle solving as well, because you'll be doing a lot of puzzle solving in the program and throughout your career as a software development professional. So Matt's going to talk to you about the delivery format of the program.
Yeah, so hello. I think we'll start with and if we can get the next slide, what the delivery format of this new program between Burridge and Lunenburg is going to look like, and what you can expect for your basic class makeup. So we'll be delivering this program between Burridge and Lunenburg. It's a full-time. The blended format, though, is that you will be on class on campus 3 days a week with 1 day of online synchronous classes. So by synchronous, we mean you are going to be on video conferencing with us live. It'll be interactive. We'll be doing various activities that are both lecture-based, but also doing active work during class time. And so that will be 1 day a week. So students at the Lunenburg campus will connect to the Burridge campus through a video link. And it's important to note, though, that this program is the same as the program that we offer in person at the IT campus, at Annapolis Valley campus, Marconi, and then through the eCampus as well for people taking it entirely online. One of the things that's interesting about, I'll keep going for a second. One of the things that's interesting about this approach, this blended approach, is that you are going to get the experience of both that in person, where we generally are going to start in our workforce, but increasingly, especially in this industry, we are working with clients well beyond our borders. We're working from home. We're working, even if we're not working from home, we're doing remote work to the places that we are working. It's a very international, distributed type job that you're building skills in. So this practice during your education, even of an online program, can be very, very beneficial to developing your work habits in an online or a blended environment. And then just the last thing around course schedule is you can expect to spend about 22 hours in class synchronous time, whether it's online or in person, per week. And that would be a mix of lecture, practice, guided examples and experiments of things that we're doing, and time to work on your assignments while the instructor is there with you. So it's a real mix of delivery that you're going to see in the class time. Okay, now next slide.
So what you're seeing in front of you now on the slide is the layout. It's essentially a program map of the entire 2-year program. So we've broken it down by year and semester. So I don't want to go into a lot of detail about each of these specifically, but I do want to share kind of some of the overview and the highlights of each semester. So starting with our first semester in year one, and as I previously mentioned in the earlier slides, is we start with that core foundation and expose you to a broad base of different topics in IT. So we're once again looking at some web development, some introduction to programming, working with databases, doing some operating systems, some networking. So some of the highlights, certainly from that first semester, is you'll be doing things like using virtual machines, or VMs as they're known, and simulators to actually set up networks and to simulate connectivity between different machines. In Python, the students really enjoy this. They build a turn-based text game, all in Python, where they randomly generate different characters, and they do a little battle against each other. It's a kind of a longer-term project throughout that course. And another highlight, you also work in a team setting with your peers to build what's known as a responsive website. So this is a website that would look good not only on your desktop if you're viewing it in a browser, but also, let's say, on a tablet or on your mobile phone. So moving into that second semester in the first year, we're starting to get a bit more specialized. We're going into a bit more depth, especially on the programming side of things. And so we're starting to get into courses like C, which is one of those lower level languages, working closer to the actual hardware. And another highlight there is doing object-oriented programming, which is one of the main paradigms of modern programming. It's what's known as object-oriented. So we'll be doing that in Java. So some highlights there in that second semester. You'll get into things like designing wireframes and prototypes for a bunch of different types of applications. Could be a mobile app, or could be a desktop app, could even be like a video game interface as well. And you'll design that stuff in your user interface design and development course. Some other highlights you'll look at, actually learning how to work from what's known as the command line. And you'll be doing that in Linux, learning about the Linux operating system, and also doing that with some of the C programming that you'll be doing that semester will all be done from the command line. And another big project in that second semester is taking that turn-based text game that you wrote in Python in your first semester, and you'll actually port all of that code to be object-oriented into Java, which is a fun task to take on as well. So that's essentially an overview of that first year. As we move into the second year, this is where we're starting to we've learned a lot of those foundational topics, those skills, and we've got a pretty good handle on programming tasks at this point. And now it's really focused on, okay, how can we apply that to really start building some interesting pieces of software? So some highlights in there, you'll be building Android apps, and Android apps that implement functionality like working with a database so you can store information locally in the app. Also doing things like making network calls over the internet to go hit a server to retrieve information back into your mobile app. Interesting stuff, starting to like build those robust applications. Getting into what's known as asynchronous programming in the applications that you're developing. So how can you make use of the CPU and different threads in the CPU to have your application do different things all at the same time? And you'll also get into running projects in your project management course. And that'll be a team-based project where we're teaching you actual project management methodologies that you'll run into when you get into industry, because working as a software developer, it's mostly team-based work in a very structured environment. So you'll get some experience and exposure to how to operate in a team environment like that. And then moving into your final semester in the program itself, we're just really trying to hone those hands-on skills, demonstrating what you've learned in actual practice. So you'll have what's known as a capstone course in that final semester, where it's a team-based project where you will actually form your own team and decide you're going to design and develop your own project. And it can students can pick anything that interests them. So we get all kinds of different types of projects. Some students like to go down the game development route and build a game. Others like to build some desktop software. You could even do like a research project on a topic in computing that interests you, and formulate and present a paper on that topic as well. So it's really open, and it's an excellent opportunity for you to really get some more experience and exposure to a skill or a topic that maybe you want to go into industry with and want to do that specific type of work. So capstone is the big highlight there in that last semester, as well as in your final semester, you have a 5-week work term, and this is a mandatory work term that we'll be talking a little bit more about here shortly. But you'll actually go out into industry and work with an industry partner for 5 weeks to get some hands-on skills and practice there as well, applying everything you've learned in school, and start being able to demonstrate and apply that in a real-world setting as well there. Next slide, please.
Yeah, so I think I would add too that one of the really interesting things about this approach and about experiential learning that is in place here is that you start building those relationships right in your first year of meeting employers and feeling out how and what work is actually happening in industry that you might be interested in getting involved in. So it's a really great opportunity to test things out. And the capstone is a nice place for students to really explore their interests in small groups, under the guidance of instructor, but really as an independent study that it can be very, a very exciting thing to take on, and really career defining as well, as you try and figure out what type of options you're going to pursue. So our students at NSCC, I alluded to it in my last slide, but we're roughly looking at a 50-50 split of how time gets spent during class time. So half your time or less will generally be lecture time, and then actually trying things out, experimenting, and doing work in a guided, self-directed way for the remainder of time while you have access to an instructor. Will be the remainder of that time, and then the rest of your class time is working on those assignments or projects or things that you're taking on. So when you're thinking about, will I get my hands dirty with project work or assignment work right away, and will I have the guidance to help me navigate those? Absolutely, in this program. And some of this, some of these things will be easy for you. You'll come in and there'll be a natural fit, and other ones will always be a struggle. So it's nice to have that mix of time where you can really access the resources in the courses that for you want to access those additional resources for that time with the instructor, or the experimentation time with your peers. So there is that opportunity to gain relevant experience in the classroom. And I think one of the things that we see here is that if you're really interested in these topics, it's interesting, you get the opportunity to really challenge your instructors to help you take that learning to the next level. So, it's wonderful as faculty when students really push our boundaries, and we get to collaborate with our student groups on, okay, why is this really happening, or what have you found here that you're looking to take to another level. So I think I have not delivered a class where that hasn't happened yet, where students haven't dug in, found new material, or even just broken something that isn't easy to explain right away. And the journey of solving those problems is very educational in and of themselves. So really, most of your classwork, you're going to have things like labs or mini challenges or activities that are guided with our materials. You're going to do project work. There's going to be group work, guided walkthroughs with your instructor, and then larger team-based projects like your capstone project, but within courses like project management, or any really where there's an opportunity to simulate the work environment of team projects. I know group work. If you're coming from high school or another program, everybody has that feeling about group work. But the thing to remember is you're with a group of your peers who have selected to be here in this program, and finding the way to challenge and motivate each other to develop that practice is a really important skill set to bring into the workforce, and possibly one of the most important that you will develop over your time here. And I think as often as possible, we're looking to tie the work you're doing in the classroom to real world problems and experiences that either we've had, because that's a really great thing about the instructors that you will have here is we're coming from industry, we have that industry experience, but also in tying it back to past work terms that we've heard from students, the experiences that you have on your work terms. So really looking to adapt and make sure the program is reflective of where you're going to end up working. All right, next slide.
Yeah, that point segues really nicely into the next part here about how the program, how we're connected to industry at NSCC. So the faculty itself, all of our faculty come from industry. So we've come from actually doing this work for a large selection of years, and bringing that into the classroom, being able to share that experience and those ideas, and really be able to understand what employers are looking for in those industries. So it's definitely one of the strengths of what we bring to the program here. So we keep those connections to industry. It's not when we kind of leave industry and come to join NSCC that all just goes away, that experience and those connections. We do our absolute best to uphold and keep those connections going. The ways that we do that are things like work terms, for example. So when it comes time for you to go out and do your work term, we'll be able to draw from our contacts in industry to be able to recommend different places that you might go depending on your particular interests. And so just some examples of even just recent connections that I still, people that I talk to on a regular basis now. I know people working at Meta, so Facebook and Instagram, people at Twitter, people at Yelp, people working in game development companies abroad and locally. HP Studios is one, for example, which is a local game development company that's had a lot of success in Southwest Nova Scotia. Mobile development companies and general development companies based in and around Halifax or Atlantic Canada. So we keep those connections going, and we draw on those as well to be able to bring in things like guest speakers so they can share kind of what it's like actually working in industry doing that work. I mean, you're gonna hear your instructors talking about this stuff every day, but you'll get bored of us, and so it's nice to have kind of a fresh perspective that's not just us, to be able to kind of validate the things that we're talking to you guys about on a regular basis. So those connections are incredibly important to us, and we do as much as we can to keep those connections to industry as well. I want to tell you a quick example of kind of the benefit of us having those connections. Just a couple of months ago, I had a previous student of the program reach out to me and let me know that they were actually talking with a recruiter to apply to a position at a company that I had worked at before I joined NSCC. And they were just looking for some general advice or recommendations before they started going through this process of applying to this company. And so they sent me an email, they reached out, and I said, kind of, hold on, don't do anything else, I'll get back to you. And so I know the technical director at the company, so I was able to reach out to the technical director and let him know that I had this student, they were a great student, they're interested in working for the company, they're starting to go through a recruiter to apply to a position with the company. And he said, no, like, just tell them to stop working with the recruiter completely, and I'm expecting their resume and cover letter direct to my email within the next couple of days. I'll be looking out for it. So I was able to go back and tell my student, hey, here's an email address for the technical director of the company that you're interested in. They're expecting your resume and cover letter. Send it to them soon, kind of thing. And so they actually ended up getting hired with the company. And it's such a great thing to be able to do, and it really demonstrates the power of those connections. So it's, once again, it's an incredibly valuable component of the program. And kind of in terms of where are students actually completing placements when it comes back to work terms, and where are they getting hired at? The wonderful thing about the program is you can kind of pick and choose where you're going to go, because we give you that broad base of skills, but we also get you to a level of competency so that you're in a position where, with some effort, you can learn almost anything in kind of the programming field or software development field. And that's really the true power and benefit of what you will draw from this program. Because we can't teach you everything 2 years, and it's impossible to expose you to everything out there. The career of a software developer is never ending in terms of what you're learning, but we will get you to that place where you are able to really kind of take on new topics and new skills on your own, and that's incredibly beneficial as well for the program. In terms of next slide there, please, Megan. So talk a little bit more about some details of that 5-week work term. So once again, we're sending you out into the workplace. It can be remote as well. So especially in software development, doing remote work is becoming more and more the norm, or like a blended approach as well. So depending on the organization that you're going to, you could be working remote, you could be doing a blend, you could be fully in person. It could be locally within Atlantic Canada, it could be internationally. Around the world, there are no kind of limitations on those details for your work term. You are required to do it. It is a requirement to graduate. It's part of the program, so it does have to be done. The question comes up a lot: does NSCC actually help you find a work term? So we ourselves are not going to kind of hand you a work term. That's not really how it works. You are responsible for going out and putting yourself out there and finding a work term on your own. But what we do is we support you through that entire process. So not only do we support you with giving you recommendations and suggestions about where you can look for a particular work term based on your interests, the other way we support you is that throughout your 2 years with NSCC, you will also be taking courses that are related to professional practices. So we're going to be building your skills and confidence in writing resumes, writing cover letters, doing interviews, all those types of things, right? So we're not only giving you the technical skills, we are going to also help you to build your soft skills as well, so that when it comes time to find that placement, or when it comes time to actually apply to that job, your first job after your program, you'll have the confidence and the ability to be able to successfully navigate that process, because that can be stressful as well. So that's one of the benefits of kind of how we've structured the program there. In terms of, this question comes up a lot: is a job guaranteed at the end of the program? And no, we can't guarantee that you get a job, but what I can absolutely confidently say is that IT professionals, and especially software developers, are in incredible demand, not only in kind of the local market, but in Canada and internationally as well, around the world. The skills that you will be learning are completely transferable no matter where you go. And that's one of the amazing things about being an IT professional, is that how you program in Canada is no different than how you program in Europe, or how you program in the United States, or anything like that. Those skills are fully transferable. So you're learning and building a skill set that you can take anywhere in the world, which is pretty incredible and flexible as well there. Next slide, please.
All right, and I think that's a great segue into some of the things I like to highlight for the students. And And one thing I want to go back and say is we talk about these relationships that you're able to build, but one of the best networks of relationships you're going to build in your time here is that with your fellow students. That's a group of people that are going to know how you work, where your skills are. And when I have been an employer, the first thing I'm asking employees when we're trying to grow is, who do you know? Who do you know that's good? Who do you know that would onboard fast? Who do you know that's ambitious for this type of work? And so you get the chance to build this network with your instructors, this network that flows from our network as an institution, but also this future network of yourself with your fellow students in this industry. And you look around and you don't know who's going to start the businesses, who's going to become technical directors at companies, but you will find that people draw and reach back to that network over and over and over again. And it's very exciting to watch how all of your peers navigate this workforce and where they end up and where those connections can lead. So I think that's a super important piece of it. We talk about student success and that graduates are in demand, and I think further on to that, I've had the privilege of having worked above the Arctic Circle in information technology to as far south as Alabama. It's a really interesting, some of that's been physically relocating to above the Arctic Circle. Much of it's been virtual work into the United States, but there is work all over the place happening, and we've seen that acceleration in this field that has come with the pandemic over the last couple of years. Of these digital agencies are doing so much more work because so much more of our lives and our work have moved online, and so the demand is huge, and the demand not just in our country, as Nick alluded to, but all over the world is huge. And graduates in North America are still highly prized around the world as developers working in this space. So, and I think even the field you work in, you're going to be surprised. I think so many of us that go through their program have an idea of what they're going to do when they get to the end of it. I think we all come in. I mean, in the IT world, I think everybody, I could count to three, and we could all say it at the same time. Is everyone's thinking game development? That's where so many people get excited about the idea of where they're going to end up in the industry. But then you start working and you realize, I've done work for industrial control systems feeding into databases. I've done work for NASA on a website that collected and distributed data from academic institutions. So the breadth of this, creating websites to doing integration to financial backend systems, to game development, which is the one thing I actually have never done, but definitely was very excited about the idea of when I was attending a programming or my post-secondary in programming. So it's a really exciting industry. It's so much bigger than you expect. You start looking around and you find there's IT jobs all over the place, and then you learn these skill sets like project management, which I have used in programs I've delivered that have nothing to do with IT, and I have used some of the skills I developed in graphic design for machining and engineering. So these tools are very transferable. Your skill set and learning that you're going to develop is very transferable, and the job market is so much bigger than it looks like from the outset.
Yeah, and when talking about what kind of where you can go with this program, I have a bit of a unique perspective because I myself am actually a graduate of the program. I went through the IT programming stream here at NSCC, and I can confidently say with about 8 years of post-secondary education that I've completed, the time I spent and the skills that I learned while studying in IT programming completely shaped the trajectory of my entire career, absolutely defining in terms of what I actually ended up long-term in industry doing and working with. So I myself loved the program, and it gave me a lot of confidence to enter a highly technical field, which was very intimidating from the outside. But once I got into it, and once I started actually learning those skills and building the confidence and receiving the help from my instructors, it really opened my eyes to all of the opportunities that are out there in the world for IT professionals and software developers. So I'm a bit biased, but I absolutely love the program and can speak very highly on it, not only from an instructor faculty perspective, but also as from the student perspective there as well.
I think I'd just add, there's a really great point there of there's no gatekeepers of your knowledge in this industry anymore. There's a really amazing community of online resources and people looking to share and grow this industry. So, you know, this is a great start point, and by no means needs to be anywhere close to your endpoint of learning in this field.
All right, thanks. I think that's it, Megan, for our prepared stuff.
Yeah, thank you both so much. And I mean, you know, listening to you both speak about all of the opportunities that exist after graduation, it's very clear that, you know, after you graduate from NSCC, you're ready to go into industry. There are jobs available for you. But one opportunity that I do want to highlight, just in case maybe university is in anyone's plans, we do have an opportunity to transfer credits from IT programming to Dalhousie University. So we have this articulation agreement that would allow you to take your 2 years, your NSCC diploma, bring it to Dalhousie in either the Bachelor of Applied Computer Science program or Bachelor of Technology, which is a small business management program. And essentially that allows you to jump directly into third year of their program. So in the span of 4 years, which is what it normally takes to have a bachelor's degree, you'd be able to have your NSCC diploma, and you'd also have your Dalhousie undergraduate degree. So if you're someone who's been wondering, am I interested in college? Am I interested in university? You could do both of those things. You'd start with NSCC. In your last year at NSCC, you could apply to Dalhousie in one of these programs and then begin your studies there the following year. Or you might decide that you want to head out into industry, get some experience, and then transfer to Dalhousie, you know, say within a few years afterwards. So that's an opportunity to just kind of flag for you in case maybe you've been curious about that university option as well. Now, the cost of the program, our tuition here, this is what we've got on the screen. And I think, you know, it's important to note that we've got pretty competitive tuition, you know, talking about that college university option. Just to be quite honest, it's a popular option as well if you've been thinking about university, because it can be a great cost savings for the first 2 years of your studies. You're with us, you're paying your NSCC tuition, and then you're able to transfer to university, which typically has a higher tuition cost. But that being said, tuition in post-secondary, it's an investment. It's a big cost to consider. And so there's a number of different opportunities that we have to kind of help you along with that. With the this program in particular, IT programming, I've circled the tuition rates that would apply to anyone interested. So if you're a domestic student, you're looking at just over $3,600 a year currently, and for international students, $11,690 per year. Now, these are our current tuition rates for 2021, 2022. Very soon, in the coming weeks, our tuition for 2022, 2023 will be released. So these numbers will change a little bit, but just for the kind of estimate budgeting purposes, these are good numbers to consider. Now, I would encourage you to head to the link that's on the screen, nscc.ca/program fees, where you'll be able to find IT programming and the full list of costs to consider. Because tuition is, you know, the bulk of that expense, but there also may be technology that you need to purchase, you know, different types of costs associated with being a student, health and dental benefits, things like that. So that will give you an idea of the full investment that you're making year by year. I just want to also point out that we have a lot going on. We have the series of webinars, of course, but we're also pretty active on social media. So if you wanted to take a look at any of the following pages, you'd be able to learn more about what's going on at the college, what student life is like, and of course, we have some great highlights on current students and also graduates. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, our YouTube channel also has some great information that you can check out. So I wanted to save a little bit of time before we say goodbye for some questions, and also remind you that if you want to reach out later on, you're more than welcome to. Our email address for the department is recruitment@nscc.ca. And so Nick and Matt, I can see I've got some questions coming in. Let me just open these up and we'll make sure that we can answer all of them before we sign off.
I would say, while you're getting those open, as a graduate of a computer science degree program, I could not recommend the idea of doing 2 years here. If you're considering the degree program and getting your 2 years at NSCC, just gives you those options to enter industry, come back. 4 years is a long time to be committing to right up front. And this industry moves fast, very fast.
Yeah, so that's nice to know too, that there's certainly value in exploring the university pathway afterwards if you'd like. And just going to reiterate, I see someone in the chat here asking, what percentage of credits in IT programming would transfer to Dalhousie? We're looking at about 50%. The university sets that expectation of how much can be transferred. And so checking out the articulation agreement earlier on, Dalhousie saying that they'll accept up to 2 years of the diploma program that we have. So you'd be looking at your full 2 years being covered and then jumping directly into third year.
So by 50%, you mean 50% of your computer science degree would be complete.
Yes,
100% of your time transfers with that articulation agreement.
Totally, yeah. All of NSCC, and then you just have the final 2 years to do at Dalhousie. All right, here is a question about programming language from someone who's planning to come in 2023. Which program language would you suggest that I start learning during this time? Would it be Java, C++, any other?
Well, that's, if you ask 50 people, you'll get 50 different answers to that question. My recommendation is anything. If you are planning on coming and you want to get a head start, any programming that you expose yourself to is only going to benefit you when you get here. If you want to get a jump start on things specifically that we will be doing in the program, especially in those initial courses, I would recommend looking at Python and Java. But once again, we don't expect you to have any programming experience when you come through the door. So we will start you from scratch. But if you're bringing any programming experience with you into the program, it doesn't matter what it is, it's only going to be to your benefit.
And
yeah, I'm going to echo. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if anyone is curious about, exploring, learning a bit about programming, there's so much information available on YouTube to get you started.
Yeah, and I'm going to echo what Nick said. I was going to suggest that we'd have to have, I'd have to go down to his office and we'd arm wrestle for the answer of which language you start with. I know I would lose. And I think it is important to know that the fundamentals of what you learn, I've worked in industry and switched languages a number of times to things that were net new. And it's challenging, and to get good at the depth of a language takes years of experience. But the fundamentals you learn in any language are incredibly transferable because really the underlying, what you're doing is the same. And as a professional, you will find that there's languages that are very tailored to your needs. There's places where I love a language that meets the needs of the kind of activity we're doing, and I would automatically go to. But I still find there's 3 in my toolbox that I'm continuously using, and that has shifted over the years. So yeah, I think if you're going to learn, find one suggestion I might make would be find something you want to do and see what the best language or the most resources are. If you're very interested in modding Minecraft, which there's tons of information out there about, then Java is your language. If you're interested in data science, it's Python. If you find a course or an instructor online that's posting material on YouTube and you just like their presentation, then it's whatever they're doing it in. it is very easy to get those fundamentals in any of them.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to learn. So it sounds like, Matt, from your perspective, learning one language or getting familiar with it will help you explore others later, but they're not always, you're kind of starting fresh each time, it sounds like, with what you're learning.
I think, I wouldn't say you're starting fresh. I think once you've got one under your belt, you're starting with a massive head start. And it's going to make all of the other ones make more sense. And you're actually going to, once you get one, and then you go learn another one, you're going to have all these aha moments. Oh, that's why this is working that way. And that thing I did before that I was sort of blindly trusting. And I would say Nick and I have had these conversations somewhat regularly where we're talking languages we have experiences with, even as late as yesterday, where it's like, why is this the way this is? And you sort of puzzle it out, and it makes a lot of other things, sort of click. Oh, okay, so that's the trajectory of this thing. And we're still working in languages that were developed, 40 and 50 years ago, some of them, that are still in active use. So, the change and the improvements, and then how it works forwards and backwards, and the why of things will become more apparent the more languages you sort of, I don't want to say master. I don't think I've mastered any of them. Which is a very active role in this industry as well. There's, it's a lifetime to master a language, or certainly the work of decades. And then it's a lifetime of getting good at moving between these languages and using the right one for the right tools. So, but there's a non-answer for your question, or it's an answer, but it's a meta answer maybe.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think it's so interesting to know about just the scope of everything that you can learn, and that learning is ongoing throughout your whole career. So that sounds like it really keeps things exciting. The next
question, the learning will never end.
Never end. Yeah, it'll keep going beyond for NSCC and beyond. Next question I have is an admission question, so I can certainly take this one. This person says that they have a degree in biology. Are they able to apply to IT programming with a biology degree? Absolutely. The admission requirements that Nick was mentioning earlier, which is a high school diploma or equivalent, if you exceed those requirements, let's say you have prior college experience, maybe you have university experience, you qualify. You can absolutely make that change and come and study IT programming. When you're looking at an NSCC class, it's really common to have a mix of students of various ages and also various experiences. So there will be students who come, directly out of high school, they're recent high school graduates. There will be students who come from a university experience, other students who come from a long career or, just different life experience, maybe raising a family, and are now deciding to do post-secondary. So that makes for, I think, a really exciting learning environment. So if you are someone who studied something different and you're interested in now moving into the IT space, yeah, you definitely could. You could apply either with your university documents or with your high school documents, really whatever is easiest to obtain.
And I want to jump in for a sec there, Megan, as a point to that. And what Megan just described is exactly, and your question, I'm not sure who sent it in, but your question, it kind of mimics my exact experience. I went to university and I completed a business degree. I did a 4-year business degree. And so I didn't start in computer science or computing, programming, all those types of things. I transitioned into this industry from a very different skill set. And was able to do it kind of no problem. It absolutely can work for you. So I don't want you to feel kind of discouraged or intimidated to come into a program like this if you're coming from a background that was traditionally not related to this kind of whatsoever. You absolutely can find success.
I'm going to actually even echo that again. I started my career in engineering. That was my beginning world, and we had to take one course in a programming language called Fortran, which I doubt you will ever work in. This is the 1990s. But I went and did my computer science I pieced courses together for it in summers and extra credits and night courses because I loved that one course so much. And as a hiring manager, I can tell you it's very exciting to see resumes where people are coming from, you have diverse experiences. And that doesn't mean you have training. I think that's very exciting for sure. But even I've worked in this job that you don't think applies to your future work, but these are where ideas and innovation come from, is this mixed team with mixed experiences. And so when I hear someone say, oh, I've got a biology degree and I'm thinking about taking a programming course, please, like this is where those ideas, the innovation is going to come from, the unique perspective on what we're doing in class time, and then what you do with what you learn. You're going to think differently, and you're going to bring that perspective to us. So I think you've got two instructors who are parroting that we both had this journey that didn't start there, and honestly hasn't ended there, with very diverse starting points and the value of those. And as an employer, or as a past hiring manager, I think I can confidently say we get excited about those experiences. I want to know, and I've drawn on my experience in the service industry in my work. I've drawn on my energy experience working in energy in my programming work. It becomes very interesting how these things overlap. Please apply.
Yeah, that's so exciting to hear. All of those experiences are so valuable, even if you're not, say, deciding to move into biology, there are skills that you've learned, or maybe you've been caregiving, like all of this stuff can be transferred and used in exciting ways in whatever your next step is.
I'll even say there's a good chance you end up back in biology with your programming skill set. Like there's so much programming done in data science, and I just picked up finishing a program I started in 2004 in energy. And my number one tool set that made that successful and actually discovered some things that are going to feed other people's research was my skill in Python. It made that engineering work possible, and you see things happening in AI and machine learning, processing large data sets of genetic markers. There's so much programming involved in all industries now. If you're trying to escape biology, that might be bad news, but I would say they need you back in those industries, the data scientists who understand the market. Working in healthcare, I can tell you, I've worked in healthcare, and a huge amount of the time that you spend when you come into an industry like that is learning the industry language, learning what people mean when they say things. And so if you're coming from healthcare, for example, if you've got a nursing degree, you've been to med school, you're an LPN, and you're thinking, I want to learn, or a clinical technician, and I want to learn programming, you're going to find a home back in that industry that is super valuable if that's what you're looking for. That will not be wasted time. So yeah, it's not just the innovation you bring, it's your ability to speak the language and work in those fields.
Yeah, that's great. There's really, I feel like we could spend all day talking about all of these different areas of industry that people could find homes in. I think that's so exciting to know too that, interest could cross over. If you're interested in arts or science, the technology can be a part of that when you're looking at future career options. So that's it that I'm seeing for questions coming in. So maybe it's a good time to wrap things up. For everyone who's been watching and sending questions, thank you so much. If anyone is watching this as a recording later, wants to send in questions, please reach out at recruitment@nscc.ca. And Matthew and Nix, thank you so much. You shared so much great info. I'm really glad that you could be a part of this.
Absolutely, you're welcome. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think at Aleko, we welcome your questions. Reach out for sure.
Yeah, definitely. If you email us a recruitment, I'd be happy to connect you with these two if you'd like as well. So please send those our way. All right, thanks so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the day.